Good afternoon and welcome to the Key Hire Solutions live stream, where we cover the issues, people, and process that matter to small business. I'm your host, Corey Harlock. From the current employee market to cybersecurity, we're here to help you stop grinding and start growing in your small business. And today we are going to talk about the use of assessments. It's a big topic. Now, I just want to remind everyone, as I talk, feel free to drop your comments or questions in the comment box, and we always leave time at the end to answer those questions. So I look forward to any questions you might have about this. So using assessments or evaluations, whatever we want to call them, I will preface this by saying I agree for the most part in the use of assessments. I think they're effective tools. Some things to remember about these tools, some misconceptions about them or the way we can use them incorrectly. Number one, I have worked with clients where they will use an assessment, but they won't trust the assessment or a tool or whatever we're going to call this. We're going to call them assessments for now. Depending on the ones that you use, they might have different names. Now, some of them might be a circle and you'll get a dot, and a quadrant of that circle corresponds to a color, which corresponds to a behavior. Some of them, they might have 12 or 13 different profiles of people they may have identified, and they will fill out a questionnaire, and then they will get a little kind of scattered grid line graph that identifies how they work normally under stress, how they identify at home, at work, whatever. There are many and varied different assessments. And I guess that speaks to the case that which one is the right one? Well, who knows? There are a lot of them. So we got to trust our assessment. And what I mean by that is I worked with a client one time where we gave a candidate in a leadership role the assessment. And the assessment came back with all the indicators they were hoping for, meaning on paper and via this assessment, the candidate looked good. But for whatever reason, the ownership didn't trust the assessment and wanted to dig deeper into the answers on the assessment. And so one of the solutions they tabled was, well, let's have them, we'll do a phone call with them, and we will ask them some more questions around the things that we see in the assessment we want some clarity on. And my answer to them was, okay, well, what answers are we looking for? And they all kind of said, well, I don't know. And I said, well, what questions are we going to ask? And how do we know what the right answer is? And they said, well, we don't know. And I said, well, and this is kind of the issue here. You've paid for this scientific assessment. It has given you the answers. It has given you the results based on the answers from the candidate that are what you wanted to see. And now you want to go and use an unscientific method to prove the results of the scientific method. It didn't make sense to me. They didn't trust the results of the assessment for whatever reason. So if you're going to use it, you have to find one that you trust and aligns with what you're looking to do. Number two, you have to follow, if you're going to use an assessment, use it. And I'll share another example with you. I had another client who was using an assessment, and they said, everyone has to take this assessment. Great. Then, and they had said they have to be kind of, this is the score or the result we're looking for on this assessment. And if they don't have the result, then they can't get hired. And talked to them a week after, and one of the people that took the assessment actually, in their words, got the worst score they'd ever seen in their life on this assessment. And they hired them because they had industry experience. So you can't have a double standard. If you're gonna require people to do this assessment and have a result that is acceptable to you, you have to do it for everyone, because you can't benchmark and you can't tell the success of what they are, what's happening in your business if you don't follow that. The third biggest mistake people make is they pick a spot on the circle, pick a color, pick a quadrant, pick a spot, or they pick a profile 1 in 12 that the person they hire has to meet this exact profile. And they lean on that. And that is the go, no go part of the interview. This is the biggest one for me. This is the biggest problem. And there's a couple of reasons for that. And we'll talk about how assessments are supposed to be used, or how we use them at KeyHire once we get through this. But when you pick let's say a profile 1 in 13, it has to be this, the architect profile. Okay, so that's great. But if you have 13 profiles, that means you have to generate, if we do simple math, 13 people to find one of them that's going to hit that profile. Then that person has to be a culture match. They have to have the experience you want, and they have to want to work for you. So if we look at the labor market, if we look at today's market where there is literally 0.6 people per job, if you have 100 people that are qualified to do what you need to do, there's 100 of them out there, and you pick a profile, you've narrowed that candidate pool from 1 or 100 to 8. And then those 8 people are also talking to other companies, but do those 8 people want to work for you? Do they have the right experience? Are they the right culture fit? So you're severely limiting your ability to hire and generate people to even talk to. It becomes a numbers game at that point. And then what happens is if you pick the specific profile or the specific location on the grid that they have to land in, and I've seen it happen, business owners will step over great candidates to get to an average candidate that meets the profile. This is what we have to be careful of, using it as a go, no go. And then the final thing I'll say is hiring to a profile does not compensate for bad management. I've had a number of experiences where people are adamant they have to fit a profile. This is what's going to work. This is the success we've had. But if you don't know how to lead, it doesn't matter what profile they hit. They're not going to be happy working for you, and they're eventually going to leave. So if you're using an assessment to compensate for bad management, and you've picked a profile or a spot on the graph that says doesn't require management and it has initiative, if you're providing the wrong atmosphere and the wrong leadership, or not good atmosphere or leadership at all, it doesn't matter what profile they are or where they land on the circle. They're not going to be happy, and they're going to leave. So that's how not to use profiles. And those are the biggest mistakes I see people make when they use these assessments. So what's the right way to use an assessment? At KeyHire, we encourage our clients to use the assessments. And if you use them, that's great. If you have a very thorough process, that is just as effective. In our experience, our process is as successful as using the assessments. But having an assessment added in, used the right way, can only help strengthen the process and maximize your probabilities to hire correctly and get the right people. And we say maximize because we're dealing with humans. There's a lot of variables there. It's not a you can never bat 1,000 when it comes to acquisition or hiring or team building. No matter how good you are and whatever tools you use, you're going to have failures. And what we want to do is minimize those failures. So an assessment is a part of the process that we use, right? There's really kind of 3 areas we want to look at when we're trying to hire. Are we using an effective process? Are we interviewing correctly? Are we making sure at every step of the process we're asking the right questions? Are we including the right people? Are we getting the information we need? And is the person we're talking to getting the information they need? The second part of this is history. right? If someone has a long history of success in the area you're looking to hire, that can't be overlooked. And I have seen people overlook that because their assessment wasn't where they wanted it to be. It wasn't the profile they wanted. And so we need to look at success. If someone has continually grown in their career and been successful, and we're able to vet that out through a very efficient and exhaustive interview process, that can't be overlooked. If they've had success, they've had success. Where the assessment comes in is it can give you an idea depending on the assessment, because we can measure whatever we want. There's an assessment to measure everything. And we can't give people 10 assessments. People in this climate, people won't fill them out. If you're asking people to do an hour-long assessment when they already have a job offer or two on the table, they're not going to fill out that assessment. So be careful. I know some of them take 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever they are. But the assessment will tell people or tell you as an owner about the person. Generally, it'll tell you how they want to be managed, how they're going to react under stress, how they're going to act in a normal environment. It might say how they're the best ways to manage them. It'll tell you where their shortcomings might be or where their focus goes when they're under pressure. Are they a person who enjoys structure? Are they a person who is an idea generator? So caveat here, if you're hiring an accountant and their assessment comes back and they are highly creative and very low on policy and procedure, that might be a candidate where you say, you know what, maybe this isn't the right fit for us. But again, let's look at their history of success and what have they done and vet them out through a thorough process. But that assessment has to be used to say, okay, do they have the traits we're looking for? How do they need to be managed? Can I manage them that way? What strengths do they bring to the table? If this is how they react under stress, how can I recognize that and deal with that as it happens? So the assessment at the end of the day, in some cases, you can say, maybe this isn't a fit based on what I'm seeing here, because you're not going to be happy. But the reality is they won't be happy in the environment if it's not aligned. But it needs to be a bigger bullseye than most people think. Some people think the bullseye is a spot on a chart or one of 12 or 13 profiles. It can't be that. For a number of reasons. In this market, you can't generate enough people to find someone or multiple people to hit that target. But also, number two, you're really limiting what you're looking at. And as I said before, sometimes when you get so focused on just one data point, or one profile, you'll step over really great candidates who are outliers of that profile or that dot on the chart, to get to someone who hits the bullseye but is an average performer. So be careful with assessments. Don't get hung up on them as the be-all, end-all. Another point to think about here is some of these assessments, in fact, most of them, you cannot, if you eliminate someone based solely on the results of an assessment, you could get yourself in trouble. And we'll leave it at that. If you want further information on that, you can talk to me about that. But you're not allowed to eliminate someone based solely on the results of an assessment. Some of them maybe, but for the most part, a good rule of thumb is you can't. So you have to have some more data points around that before you can say, you know what, I don't think it's the right fit. So that is my feeling on assessments. They are a good tool when used right, but I find some people just lean on them too heavily, and it really limits their ability to find and hire good people. And they would rather hire an average person who meets the criteria versus on a great person who might be an outlier of that criteria. Hope that kind of gives you a little background on assessments. Let's see, did we get any questions from our viewership today? Matt, did we get anything there? Do you recommend giving candidates personality assessments to ensure they fit with company culture? So again, this is the thing. these assessments, when they come in, if you get someone to take them, they might not land exactly where you want them to be. But upon further discussion and asking the right questions and taking them through a thorough interview process, you might be able to understand a little bit more about them. A lot of assessments say it doesn't matter what mood you're in or what environment you're in when you write them, but some of them do. If people are distracted when they write them, maybe they just fly through it because they have other things going on. It's not a people that sell assessments are selling a product, right? So let's first understand that. They obviously have to believe in the assessment that they're selling, but they're going to sell you the attributes of that assessment. There are a lot of these assessments, so that means there's a lot of good assessments, people collecting data and giving it back to you, and they're collecting these data points and they're able to give you good information back. Now, we can measure whatever we want through these assessments, but again, it's not perfect. These things can change. People can change depending on the environment they're in when they write these assessments. We never know. So we have to go through personality assessment. I don't know if a personality assessment is always the right thing to do when you're hiring someone, but we want to explore what the results are and not go, well, that person doesn't match our culture, they're out. I don't believe in that because sometimes what you get on paper isn't what you get in person. Do we have another one there, Matt? Have you noticed a difference in the quality of applications when you've required candidates to take an initial assessment? So here's another great point for everyone out there. And this has been the case for a long time, not just in this hiring market, but requiring people to take an assessment prior to applying is a barrier to entry. And I know the standard comeback is, well, if they really want to work here, they'll take the time to do the assessment. And my comment back is, if you're a small business owner, people might not even know who your company is, so they might not want to work there. I don't know that people, if they see a company they've never heard of before, are willing to invest that amount of time. And so putting an assessment as a barrier to entry to applying to your job, though it might save you time, it's going to severely limit the candidate pool that you have to talk to. And also some of the best people, if they have other jobs, so if they're already at a job and you make it really hard for them to apply to yours, they will just say, man, I already have a job. This feels like a lot of work. I'll just exit out of here. If people are so who's going to fill out the assessment? People that really need a job. And often the people that really need a job aren't the best candidates or might not be the right one for you. So let's not discourage people from inquiring about our company or reaching out to people. Let's make it easy to engage with them and start building a relationship before we ask them to start donating their time and doing these assessments. When we look at our hiring in the Kia C, one of the C's, we always want to make sure that we are aware of the time, and we're being considerate of our candidates' time and making sure that we're only asking them for their time at the right times, and we're not, putting them out or making them feel like they're giving us a lot of time and energy and they really don't even know what's going on yet. So in my experience, making an assessment a barrier to entry at the beginning of the process just isn't a great idea. Mind you, we don't post jobs and have people apply in ever. Again, it's, in my opinion, that's just not a great way to save your time and get the right people. So when we engage with people, we make sure we built the relationship. We make sure we feel they're going to be they're strongly suited for the role, and they have an interest in what we're trying to do before we ask them to take an assessment, because that way there's some currency. We both have some emotional currency in the game. What do we have next, Matt? What are some better alternatives to an assessment, to assessments? For me, and at KeyHire, the way we do it is a exhaustive and efficient interviewing process. If you have the right process and you've clearly mapped out, so it starts before the process. If you've done your diligence at the beginning and you know exactly what you're hiring for, what we would call our avatar, we clearly outline three areas that we are looking for. You want to be looking for culture fit, you want to be looking for the right experience, and you want to be looking for capacity to grow. Someone who has more experience than you need today so you can scale and grow your business. Once you understand what you're looking for, you then want to create your messaging, your engagement, your marketing tools that clearly speak to those data points on your avatar. We believe we either want people to say hell yeah or hell no. We don't want tire kickers. We want people to say, hey, it doesn't sound like it's for me. Or we want people to say, hey, this sounds super interesting. I'd like to talk to you. Once you engage with them, if you understand what you're looking for, you clearly articulate that in your marketing message, and then you engage with people with that information, not vague buzzwords, but like real good, bad, and the ugly type stuff about the role. Then when you start engaging with them and you start taking them through this well thought out, exhaustive, and efficient interviewing process, and you start gleaning this information and verifying and doing your diligence on their background and all that good stuff, right? If they have a history of success, we want to make sure that's for real. And we want to understand, are they going to be a culture fit? Our success rate is very high. We have over 90% success rate in the people we place with companies because of this process, whether we use assessments or not. But we have a very exhaustive and process. It's efficient, it's fast, but it's exhaustive and it's very well thought out. So we make sure we're checking a lot of these boxes. If we need to use an assessment, we make sure we slot that in. We put a lot of thought into where we're going to put that assessment to make sure that we have enough interest from the candidate before we ask them to do that. Even at that, sometimes that's the drop-off point for candidates. You can have a super strong candidate, you ask them to take an assessment, and you never hear from them again. And again, that goes back to, well, I already have a job, so this is a lot of work now. Or, well, I've got 2 other offers and they don't require me to write this assessment, so I can just save a bunch of time and take a job that I was already kind of excited about anyway. So you have to be careful about how you use them, why you use them, when you use them. Again, they are valuable tools if used correctly. But the KeyHire process does not use assessments. If our clients, the business owners we work with, have been using assessments in the past and they have a baseline in their business, and it's a tool that they have found valuable, we will implement it into our process. But it's important that they understand the correct use of the assessment. So I think that's it. That's our final question for the day. So guys, we hope you enjoyed the latest episode of KeyHire Solutions live stream. Our episodes are going to be released bi-weekly and available on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, and on our website at keyhire.solutions. If you'd like to learn more about KeyHire, you can ask me a question or schedule a consultation at keyhire.solutions. You can follow us on LinkedIn, stay up to date on small business issues, and to catch our free live webinars. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks.